Welcome back, everyone, to the Frosty Canucks podcast. I'm your host, Jason, along with Frosty.
Spoopy.
Poopy?
Spoopy.
We're on Spotify, yes.
Yes, exactly. That's it. There's nothing else there.
All right.
Jason's going to edit this out, but there was a very long, awkward pause after I said spoopy where I think his brain shut off as he's trying to figure out what to say.
I was just expecting that near the end, not the beginning. You've really confused me. Let's do the plugs now. You can follow... No, I'm just joking. All right. Frosty, you know what life is like?
A box of chocolates?
No, life's like an RPG. You gotta wait your turn.
Oh, for fuck's sake. So we're starting with that one, aren't we?
So, it was recently announced that Yakuza, the Yakuza series, is going to be focused on turn-based RPG, whereas the Judgment series is going to be focused as an action RPG, so the beat-em-up combat.
My disappointment is immeasurable about this decision.
I agree with you 100%. It is sad, especially since we finally got a better... Well, I wouldn't say a better main character, but Ichiban is much more charismatic than Kiryu was in certain regards, so...
I don't mind Kiryu, but in Yakuza 0, I liked Majima better because he is more of a character, and I thought that Ichiban was fantastic as a lead. Like you said, he's got a lot more charisma. It's just unfortunate that he has the worst combat.
You just want him, but in a completely different game.
That is correct, yes.
You want a mod that is pretty much just replaces the combat.
I want a mod that makes it so that every time I get into combat, my characters just level up. Just have it so that every single time I do a battle, they just level up if I win. That's how much EXP they get. That way I can do as few battles as possible while getting through the main game.
It's not a bad idea. I was thinking the mod is you take out the other characters and it's Ichiban and it goes back to the brawler. Like someone puts just an Ichiban costume on Kiryu and puts Kiryu in the game and it makes all the characters.
That's something I would like, but that's a lot of work. So I'm thinking more realistically, like just hyperinflate the EXP values so that like after every fight it just maxes it, like you just level up. Everyone just levels up.
You just want story mode then.
Fundamentally, yeah. The combat is shit. I understand why that's what they're doing. Apparently, it was a lot more popular in Japan.
It sold very well in Japan.
A lot of that is owing to the fact that they did copy, fundamentally, the combat system from one of the most popular RPGs that is made by a Japanese developer. Yeah.
Yep.
I'm not really surprised that it was a big hit, but it was also a big hit in the West.
You know, I think for every new Dragon Quest release, they have to plan it around so that it happens like either...
Yeah, I was going to say, don't they make it like a public holiday?
Yeah, they pretty much make it a public holiday because so many people take the day off
Monster
from
Hunter
work.
Rise
I think it's
was
either
like
Monster Hunter or Dragon Quest, one of the two.
I remember that happened with Monster Hunter Rise because Monster Hunter is basically the Japanese Call of Duty.
You're not wrong.
Yeah, well, a new one comes out every single year, so... And it's extremely popular there. But yeah, like a bunch of people were just like taking work off when Monster Hunter Rise launched this year. So a bunch of companies were just like, fuck it. And they just made it a holiday for everyone. Just go home, play Monster Hunter Rise, get it out of your system, and then come back into work on Monday and be ready to work.
It's not the worst strategy, actually, when you think about it.
Because then all your employees, they'll actually be focused because they actually, they played the game. They got it at least a little bit out of their system and they come into work and like, oh, hey, did you play Rise? Oh, I played Rise. Oh, and they like, have water cooler talk or whatever.
Back to the grind.
Yeah, but then they're ready to go back to the grind. But yeah, so I think we've both been outspoken on this podcast in previous episodes about how we dislike the combat in Yakuza Like a Dragon, and I'm super disappointed that this is the direction they're maintaining.
How do we fix it?
We can't fix it. Or do you just mean like in general, how would I fix the combat in Yakuza?
Because I've said before that if you add more environmental stuff, I think it would be a lot better.
I could see
Bring back the heat actions. I know, I think you said that the heat actions are essentially all the moves, but like the environmental heat actions, there's like nothing. I want Ichiban to push one of the enemies off of the bridge or something like that.
Yeah, that would be cool. I think it was... Because we were talking about this in my stream last week, and I think Vox said that they missed the fact that there was no environmental effects either. So I got to imagine there's other people who are, like what you just said, where they would really appreciate having those environmental type things. I could take it or leave it. The combat system could be, what I would want is for it to be more of an action-focused title again, like it is in the older games. I'm not going to sit here and say that Yakuza 0 has the deepest, most complex involved combat in the game, but it's like, it works. It's serviceable. It has enough skill testing elements in it to where you have to think about what you're doing instead of just mashing buttons, unless you're playing on easy, in which case you can just smash your head into the controller and roll it back and forth. I really don't like how in Like a Dragon, the difficulty is so artificial. It's so blatantly artificial. You just beat thousands of punching bags that pose absolutely zero threat to the player. And then,
you get
to a
11,
point.
12.
Yeah, I think it's chapter 12. When I got to that chapter, the enemies were 20 levels over my party, and I could still beat them without them posing any threat. But then I get to the boss, and the boss says, no, you are not strong enough. You need to go grind for 4.5 hours because you're playing World of Warcraft now. Which is dog shit. That's not fun.
No, it's not. It is not.
So there's no tactical options, there's no strategy, there's no thinking. It's not about thinking, it's not about trying to use any skills you have, it's about making sure your party crosses an arbitrary stat threshold, and when they do, then you're allowed to progress, which is fucking stupid.
It's not like the beat-em-up combat where you can get through the entire encounter without getting hit once, because...
There was like light RPG elements, I'll say, in the previous Yakuza games, at least in 0 there is, but like, you don't need to unlock most of the skill tree to be able to finish the game, and I know that because on the normal difficulty, which is what I played it on, I had barely any of the fucking skill tree unlocked and I finished the game.
You didn't make any money?
I had made some money from the management game, but I kept pouring it back into the management game. And then when I eventually got bored of playing that, I invested like what I had accumulated partly into giving the blue tree some more health and some new moves and a little bit more damage.
One.
Yeah, and then the beast one, the orange one. I liked that one a lot. So I gave that one like an improved guard and some extra health.
I always focused on the speed one, the pink one.
I hated the pink one because
Really?
I was terrible at stepping out of the way of attacks. I just like beating the shit out of stuff, hitting them really hard so they couldn't hit back.
Oh, we played differently then.
Yeah, probably. Did also like grabbing random crap out of the environment, and the beast one was the best for that because it would just auto pick up anything that was nearby.
Ah, yes, this motorcycle. This is a common item to swing.
Yeah, I'm just gonna pick up this e-bike that's casually parked outside this ramen shop and beat the shit out of somebody with it.
Imagine if that was like a deduction when you use that item.
You lost money at the end of combat because you had to pay out the person whose like e-bike you destroyed.
That'd be funny, actually. You'd still win money. But...
Yeah, no, I get what you mean, but that would be pretty funny. Or you get like a cost penalty for the amount of destruction you do to the city. But yeah, so like to answer your question, because I've been kind of airing my grievances so far, how do we fix the combat in Yakuza Like a Dragon? First off, a lot of the abilities were built around the ability for you to target multiple people if they were like lined up in a specific way, but you had no meaningful way of controlling your character's position or the enemy's position. So I think first off, if you want to have combat or moves, I guess, that are built around some kind of positional advantage, then I think you need to offer systems that offer the ability for players to meaningfully impact that element of combat. So you can't just have it set to be like, oh, if the enemy happens to walk in this direction or this configuration and you use this move, it's really good. You have to have the ability to either move your characters in such a way that you can influence how their position affect, like hits, like how they words.
You want essentially the ability to pick the move and then also move the character into like some sort of position, like kind of a drag them to the area.
Yeah, like Disgaea is like the most recent thing I played, but you can do a lot of either repositioning your own units or repositioning the enemy units into the specific attack patterns of the attacks. And that's like a very good example of something like what I would kind of want. So it'd be like, how cool would it be if Ichiban's like twirling bat move that hits everyone, right? How cool would it be if you could have like Namba and Saichan and Adachi like go and like drop kick a bunch of enemies into like a center position and then have Ichiban just like do his tornado bat move on them because they're all like lined up that way. I think that would be really, really neat as like a concept. Or there would be like, if you had some moves that were like, okay, I'm going to use this move with Adachi because it will specifically push the enemy in this way, and then that will make it so that I have like a couple of enemies will be lined up so that I can use Namba's fire breath and then hit all three of them in like a line or something. I think it would give you more tactical.
You just want it to be an SRPG at that point.
I mean, kind of. I want there to be some tactical options built into the way that the game is already kind of designed. It just doesn't have any of those options. It just has like a bunch of damage-based moves, but instead of that, if it had moves where you had like a material reason to use them besides damage by like repositioning or by offering, I guess some of them offered buffs, but I don't know if you found this, but the buffs are pretty inconsequential. Did you find that as well? I don't know if they help more on harder difficulties, but on normal they sure as shit didn't feel like they were that necessary, aside from like healing.
I think some of the ones where it's like do double attack next turn helps, but other than
Oh
that,
yeah, yeah,
like,
yeah. The one that Ichiban has where he can make it so that he'll survive a fatal blow. That one's really useful specifically because for some reason he's the only character who can't die, which is stupid, even if you've got med
they
packs.
need to get rid of that. Get rid of that cliche. I hate that fucking thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, if you've got med packs, then just, like, force the next character who is acting on your turn to use the med pack on him or something.
No, yeah, just take out the game over because one of your 7 characters got killed. It's so aged.
Yeah, it's really antiquated. But yeah, so that's kind of like the big thing for me and then like the other thing that would be neat is they already had a system where there was different resistance types and like elemental types on certain attacks. And certain characters, like, they resisted certain types of damage. I think if they doubled down on that and made it, like, more obvious what type of damage was good against certain characters, I think that could be fun as well. So it's like, oh, if you see the characters that are wearing particular articles of clothing that are, like, flammable, then it would be cool if, like, okay, they're all weak to fire, and you can, like, identify that by, like, visual cues in the game.
Instead of experimental.
Yeah, exactly. So instead of it being like a crapshoot, you get rewarded for paying attention. So it's like, okay, if they're wearing like a piece of equipment, or even better, if you could like, maybe it's probably more work than they'd be willing to do. But if you, when you change the equipment on your characters, if you could see what it looked like, and if you saw like the enemy wearing that exact same piece of equipment, you could be like, oh, I know the properties of this equipment already. It's like weak to fire, or it's weak to electric damage, and then you use like a fire or electric move and do super effective damage against them for a huge damage bonus. That would be really cool.
I can't remember. Were you able to change equipment on the fly?
Not in combat, but you could freely change it when you were out of combat.
Yeah, I think they should add that as a thing, because like you could have good weapons, but let's say you have Ichiban has the electric bat, and then all of a sudden you're fighting against someone who absorbs electric damage.
Oh, it'd be nice if you could switch the equip like
Yeah.
mid-fight. I think that would be cool too. I don't know a lot of games do that, but it really sucks when you run into things like, or when one of your characters gets like hard countered and you have no meaningful way of changing that without just reloading the save and being like, well, I know that this boss hard counters this particular thing that I was doing.
Oops.
Yeah, I think I ran into that a few times
Guess I'll
actually
die.
because of like fire-related immunities that bosses have. Those are kind of like the big things that I would like to see. That and just, remove any, we're going to stonewall you because of stats. I guess the other thing is that I don't think the job system works on any level at all. So that entire thing needs to be reworked.
Yes, I agree. The job system should have been keeping pace with the level ups, not...
It should have been faster. That way it encourages you to move your job around. Because it was so slow and felt really, really, really punitive when you swapped jobs because it was really hard to level them up.
Well, and yeah, if you played like the middle of the game, leveling up the jobs again was just a pain in the ass. So you were kind of stuck with what you had picked earlier on.
Yeah.
Like by chapter 7 through 10 and 11, you were pretty much just gated into like, oh, this is my class. Ichiban's a chef right now. That's it.
Yeah, I think if you have a job, or a game rather, where you have the ability to swap jobs, and you want players to swap jobs, then you just have to make it not suck ass. So don't make it super duper punitive. Don't make 90% of your stats come from swapping, like from fucking the jobs, and have them not carry over when you swap jobs. Like that's just, everything about the way the system was designed felt super punishing, so you didn't want to switch.
At least at lower levels, for sure.
It felt like they weren't, like there's a ton of things in there that weren't really well thought out. The way that they seemed to want you to play the game was not how the game would be played optimally at all. There's like a lot of things they need to change, even on like a basic level, to fix some of the problems in that game. So that's kind of where I'm at. Is there anything else you wanted to add? I kind of monopolized a bit of that. I'm sure you probably have some other ideas that I haven't even thought of.
Not a whole lot. I mean, just, yeah, they have to rejig the entire combat system. Really just makes it feel like they should go back to the roots, but that's what Judgment's for.
If they want to stick with this, they just need to put in some work to actually make it like not terrible. Because right now it is, honest to God, one of the worst combat systems in any game I've ever played.
Oh, and make the summons more flashy. Or no, sorry, don't even make them more flashy. Make them part of the combat.
So they actually come in and fight with you.
Like you summon the crab, and then the crab's just there as like an extra party member for like a few turns.
That'd be cool.
Instead of like the special, like, oh, the crab poisons everyone because it rains crabs. Moses sent down the crabs instead of the frog.
I don't know. I really liked the animations because I thought they were goofy, but after you've seen them a few times, I was skipping over almost all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're so long. Holy shit.
Yeah, they're like 3 times they've overstayed their welcome.
Yeah. The only one that I didn't ever get tired of watching was, I forget his name. It's Buster something. The first one you get.
Oh, yes.
I just thought it was really funny how this buff guy comes out with like spiked clubs on his hands and he just starts beating the shit out of people and then like finishes with like the Heisman stance flex. That whole thing was
But
super
wouldn't that
duper
be so
cheesy.
cool if he was just in your party all of a sudden for like 2 turns or 2 hits?
Yeah.
And then like he's just there like...
That's more work though.
I know it's more work, but they've got time now. They've got the basics of Yakuza RPG. They can do more with it.
Just from the fact that this team made ostensibly 7 games, or no, not ostensibly, they definitely did. Is Judgment in the same map as well?
Judgment, the first one is in Kamurocho, and then Lost Judgment is in Kamurocho and Yokohama.
Yeah, so this is a team that has fundamentally recycled the same map for like 10 games. So I just assume that they are the laziest developers on the planet because it's like, okay, well, like how much of this shit can we recycle? Because that means we have to do less new stuff.
Perhaps.
So it's like I just assume that they're not going to go out of their way to do anything that's actually like a lot of work because why would we do that when we can just recycle half the shit? Which is why I'm really worried that Yakuza, I guess 8, will be exactly the same as like it'll have the exact same dumbass bullshit job system. It'll have the exact same dumbass bullshit combat. We were discussing this briefly in one of my Discord servers, but I kind of feel like critically and commercially, this game was really well received.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like a lot of people who were praising it at launch did not finish the game. I feel like most people who were like vocally like, oh yeah, Yakuza's great on Twitter, I don't think most of them got even halfway through the game before they stopped playing it outright.
This is like the longest to complete a Yakuza game. I know I looked that up online, like on the, how long does this take? I was
going to say, most of the Yakuza games feel like you could beat them reasonably within about 20 to 30 hours, and this game is probably like 40 to 60.
Main story, 46.5 hours. Main story plus some extras, 65.5 hours.
That's about where I clocked in on the game.
Versus Yakuza 0, 31 hours, and then for extras, 64 hours.
Damn, I was pretty spot on with those numbers.
And Yakuza Kiwami, 18 hours for the main story, 33 hours for the main and extras. There's a lot of shit to do when you 0, to be fair.
They put it out before 6, so by that point they'd had like 5 games of really kind of well-developed systems and minigames and whatnot to just all dump into 0.
Yes. Anyway, we are very disappointed with that. Judgment will be the only saving grace for the action RPG combat. Did you want to get into the Ubisoft news?
You can take this with a grain of salt, which is what I am kind of doing. But it was reported this past week that Ubisoft said that they want to pivot away from the traditional AAA model and instead change their focus to releasing high-end free-to-play titles. So instead of releasing around 3 or 4 big chungus games every single year, they want to move into, I guess the closest analogy would be something like what they've done with For Honor or Rainbow Six Siege, which is having a game that people play and spend money on recurrently over a period of time. And fundamentally, they want to have like big budget titles that are free to play.
I don't know if this is with a grain of salt. I thought this was actually like Ubisoft told their investors this.
Yeah, but they'll tell their investors what the fuck they want to tell their investors. It doesn't mean they're going to action it.
Fair enough. I get what you mean now.
I fucking deal with publicly traded companies all the time, and they say a ton of shit if they think it'll make their fucking stock price go up. So anyway, what are your thoughts on that kind of a directional shift? I know like neither of us really play Ubisoft games, but
I mean, their premium games already have all the microtransactions that like are usually in free-to-play games, like in Assassin's Creed, a single-player game. You've got the Time Savers, their new label of microtransactions, like, get XP a lot quicker. So honestly, this move seems like the next evolution of Ubisoft games. Like, it just seemed like that's where they were going.
That's kind of where I was at when I read this news. I've been a critic of the way that AAA games have monetized things. I don't think that if you build an entire free-to-play economy in your game, you should charge upfront for it. It just feels really stupid. I think Evolve's a really good example of that. I played Evolve when it went free-to-play on PC, when they were thinking of like trying to pivot the game back into being a successful product. And I was like, wow, they really like managed to make this game into a free-to-play game really, really quickly. Because the way like the unlocks and the shop worked, it was like already set up like a free-to-play game. And then I found out that they hadn't actually changed anything in the game. That was how it launched. And I was like,
Yep.
wow, I understand now why everyone hated this game. You had to
It
pay
came out with
$60 and then you had to spend like 100 hours unlocking everything through fucking like,
Or you could get digital, like one
yeah,
of those digital editions, and then you just unlock all the extra monsters. So on day one, you already have like the big
a huge
extra
material
monsters.
advantage.
A huge advantage.
Like a lot of the skills that you started off with were not very good, and skills that you unlocked later in a character's progression tree were usually the better ones. Some of them were more like playstyle dependent, but I think around like level 15 to level 20, which required you to play the character for about like 5 to 6 hours, that was when you started to unlock the skills that actually like were really good for a character and could start to synergize with the character a lot better than the bullshit you started off with. And keep in mind there was like, I want to say about 25 different characters in this game, so right off the bat that's already like 100 hours of grinding.
I mean, EA did the same thing with Star Wars Battlefront 2.
Yeah, and it was fucking obnoxious when they did it. But yeah, you touched on exactly what I was already thinking, which is that if you just remove the fucking AAA price tag from a lot of their games, then
There's
you
no
already
difference.
have a free-to-play game.
Yeah, I mean, all I can think of is they could use this as now an excuse when it comes out a little buggy and go, well, it's free, guys. Shut the hell up.
Yeah, or they would love to not get reamed in the same way that like fucking Nintendo or Bethesda. I guess Bethesda finally got their ass nailed in with Fallout 76, but personally I feel like I don't know about Assassin's Creed because it's like the model doesn't, I don't think it makes as much sense for Assassin's Creed, but they'll blanket try and shove it in anyway. And I feel like the same thing could be said for Watch Dogs, but for their sporting titles like the Drive Club or Steep, or I think they have some other sports related.
You mean the Crew?
Yeah, sorry, what did I say?
Drive Club. That's the...
Is that Sony's?
Yeah, that's
Oh,
Sony
my mistake.
exclusive. But don't worry, Sony's already shit canned the online multiplayer for that, so...
Oh, okay. But yeah, or like Far Cry, and then like again like Siege and For Honor, like those are games that are already built in a way that I think works really well for this, where it's just you release new content and then you have new cosmetics, or you like make people buy microtransactions for the packs for like the new content that comes out. So it's like, oh, you got to pay for like the maps or whatever, or for new like characters or classes or whatever. Far Cry specifically, I know that like the story is not really the focus for those, so it'd just be like, hey, we released a new map and here is all the new shit you can do in this map. So maybe make some weapons like paid additions and then, kind of send people on their way.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what would be the best fit. Probably the new game that'll come out to replace Siege. I could see them potentially using that as the free-to-play experiment.
And then I think the obvious one that I haven't mentioned yet, and anyone who watches Ubisoft's E3 conferences will know what game I'm about to say, is Just Dance. It makes so much sense to make Just Dance a fucking free-to-play game.
Oh yeah, I keep forgetting about that game.
Just charge people for new tracks. That's it. Just make them fucking microtransactions. It's easy.
Season track packs.
Yeah, the game is already designed like it should be a fucking free-to-play game. Same as like Guitar Hero or Rock Band. Just monetize the fucking songs so you can pay for the licensing fees. Easy. Done.
Yeah, that seems simple.
And I don't even think the casual market that really enjoys Just Dance would even have a problem with it, because it's just like, oh, you put out Just Dance, they download a fucking free app, and then they can just pay for whatever fuck songs they want. It's like, okay, I don't think anyone would have a problem with that. Or you pay like a monthly fee to have access to like a monthly rotating thing of different songs, kind of like how Spotify works.
That kind of sounds a little shitty, especially if you don't get the songs you like. But I guess if they had like songs, like constantly add new songs, that could be an incentive.
I imagine for something like that, they would have to strike some kind of a fucking record deal, but the record companies are already probably chomping at the bit for ways that they can get fucking extra money from streaming services. So I have to imagine a free-to-play game that's going to throw them some money for every fucking play of a track that the game has or whatever. Then that might, help to incentivize them and be like, oh, I want to get my, my songs into Just Dance.
Kind of makes sense with Just Dance, because I feel like all you have to do is download an app on your phone that's like your controller or something like that.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
everyone's got a phone.
Yeah, exactly.
So
I think that was a thing a couple of years ago, actually. The phone thing, that is.
I don't really play Just Dance, so
No, I vaguely remember that being like a big selling point of one of them, or like a companion app or something. Ubisoft advertised at one of their E3 shows before a bunch of the staged flash mob people got up and started awkwardly dancing, which always freaks everyone out. The audience is so visibly uncomfortable whenever that happens. I love Ubisoft's conferences specifically for that moment, where everyone's just like, this is happening. I really wish I wasn't here right now.
Imagine it this year. Just going to be a recording of it.
Yeah, I think that would be less awkward, though.
Yeah, it's going to be way more edited, that's for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of... I think I'll believe it when I see it, but I, at least in theory, can understand how they would pivot into doing that. I don't know if it'll be... Well, I say that. I was gonna say I don't know if it would be super successful, but I imagine it would be.
I mean, we're not going to see this for at least a little while because they've just kind of announced it, and they've got at least quite a few games this year that are releasing, like Far Cry 6. Whenever that happens, it got moved from February, I think. Yeah, and then I think the next Rainbow Six game got pushed as well.
They're finally going to replace Siege. I didn't know that. That makes sense, though. The game's been out for, I think, 5 or 6 years, so they've definitely... I think now is a good time to be like, okay, everyone, we're moving to
new shiny project.
Yeah, we've been working on something new. We've got a bunch of new features we think are going to really enjoy.
It's just a reskin.
Yeah, well, I don't know. At least with that, I have a lot more respect for supporting a game for like 6 years and then moving people onto like a new version of it instead of Call of Duty, where it's like you have to just buy a new fucking version every single year because the old one's just invalidated. Sports games do the same thing.
I mean, that's what Assassin's Creed was doing every year, but at least it was single player, so it wasn't
yeah,
so
it's
bad.
A little bit different with a single player game versus a fucking multiplayer game. I like when multiplayer games actually get years worth of support, provided the developers can actually afford to do it. Obviously, Ubisoft can. They're one of the fucking most successful companies in the entire games industry, so...
Do you think it's gonna be like free-to-play open world games?
I imagine that's what would happen, yes.
Ugh.
Because, like, so sorry to Ubisoft fans who listen to the podcast if you exist, but I fucking hate Ubisoft games. They're like the most homogenous gray goo. They're so creatively bankrupt. I fucking despise their games. Even if they were free, I don't think I would ever give like any of them a shot because they're just so fucking boring. Like, I know I'm severely in the minority because their games, especially their open world games, are some of the best selling games every single year.
No matter what, even if it reviews poorly.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. People will still buy it because it's an Ubisoft game. It's kind of like, do you ever find that when you go to a new city for like travel or whatever, or like a work related trip?
What's this traveling that you speak of? I don't remember any of that.
Well, when you were, did you ever find that instead of trying some place new, you would just like look for whatever a fucking like chain restaurant was because you know that the chain restaurant's going to be exactly, even though the food is only going to be like mediocre, you know exactly what you're getting? I feel like Ubisoft is the chain restaurant of video games, where it's like mediocre, but you always know that it's mediocre.
I was wondering
right?
where you're going with that. I'm like,
it's never going to be good. It's never going to be bad. And the fact that it's never going to be bad is the important thing. You don't want to have a bad experience. You're okay with having a mediocre
So it's
experience.
the McDonald's of the game industry?
I was thinking more like Krabby Joe's, but yeah, I like McDonald's or fucking KFC or some other bullshit, right? Because it's a franchise, you know exactly what you're getting because every single franchise has to operate with like exactly the same shit.
Well, I mean, Ubisoft's the fast food truck of the industry. Actually, I guess that's Call of Duty, actually.
Yeah, I was going to say,
I should be honest.
Call of Duty would be more of the McDonald's.
Yeah, fair enough.
Admittedly, I was one of those people, and now I actually try and be like, okay, I'm going to try some place, and if the food is terrible, well, it sucks to be me, but at least I tried something different, so...
Yeah, I try new stuff too.
Okay, so that doesn't give us a nice clean transition, but fuck it. So like last week we answered one of Thomas's questions, and this week I'm going to answer the other one because he gave us 2 really good questions. Even though I'll be the first to admit that my answer last week to his question was not as good as Jason's. But so this week, friend of the show, avid listener Thomas asks us, recently I purchased a Warhammer 40k themed Humble Bundle and received a whole bunch of games, as you do with Humble Bundles. As I've been playing through them all gradually, most of them are rather garbage. There's a couple that are great, but no in between. User reviews of these games are glowing, but that is mostly because of fans who just want to see their Warhammer lore in video game format. There is a new Necromunda FPS game coming out at the end of June, which, based on the video, looks amazing. I agree, by the way. He originally sent me the trailer for it, and I was like, this game looks fucking awesome. This looks amazing, but there is always that seed of doubt that is placed by all licensed games that it will end up being terrible, but the fans will eat it up regardless. Why do you think there are always so many bad licensed games based around great intellectual properties? It can't be a budget issue. There is great games out there made on a smaller budget. So, with regard to the Warhammer license in particular, there was a great video done by Extra Credits back in 2015 that detailed how Game Workshop, that's the company that owns the Warhammer intellectual property, how they were pivoting their business. So when it comes to licensed games, there's fundamentally two types of strategies that are used. You either get a partner and you are partnered very tightly with them and you have very strict guidelines for what they can and cannot do and how they can use your intellectual property. So this is what you saw with Disney when they got EA to do the Star Wars games. They were very particular about what could be done, what couldn't be done in those games, and that resulted in some products that Disney was very happy with, but the general public maybe wasn't as happy with. And for a while, games that are based on Warhammer were done in that way. But in and around 2015, they had a number of years by that point, I want to say about 4 or 5 years by that point, where they were giving their licenses out for specific subcategories of their different universes and different characters and different games, and they were just giving them to whoever the fuck wanted them.
I feel like I remember that because I saw some pretty unremarkable games in the 40K universe.
Yeah.
Not that I'm a really avid fan of them. I've not really played. I don't think I've played any of them, but I remember seeing that and going, "What?
What the fuck is going on here?
What the hell is this? Why is there this?" I think one was a lane defense game, and I was just like, "Why? This seems lame."
Mm-hmm. So the idea there is instead of building out a single, dumping all of your eggs into one basket and hoping that the end product is good and helps to increase the value of your intellectual property's brand, the idea is to send out as many titles as possible because you believe that the strength of your brand can survive any bad games that come out. And in the case of Warhammer and Warhammer 40K, it absolutely can.
Mm-hmm.
At worst, a bad game comes out and people who are really diehard fans don't like it at all, but that doesn't change their attachment to the property. They're still going to like the property from Games Workshop. The fact that the licensed game ends up being shit is it doesn't matter to Games Workshop. They didn't really invest any money in it. The company that made the game is probably paying them a fucking license fee from their money. It's basically it's just like having a really bad ad go out there, right? Or if it's okay, if people who are already invested in this particular game or this group of characters or this segment of the lore were disappointed by it, but it doesn't matter. It hasn't changed their appreciation for the product for our tabletop games and the figures. And what can be a good thing that can come from that is that somebody didn't even know this shit existed, sees it, and goes, maybe they think the game is crap, but they're like, I wonder what this is based on. And then they check out what it's based on. And the I wonder what it's based on scenario is more likely to happen if the game is at least somewhat enjoyable. It may have a lot of problems. It may be pretty mediocre. Or in some cases, there are some really good Warhammer games that came out from smaller developers. And then afterwards, you're going to have that person go, hey, I want to check out some of the other Warhammer related stuff. And so in that way, this just works as a giant fucking ad for Games Workshop's tabletop games. Personal example for me with relation to Warhammer specifically, I didn't know shit about Warhammer, and then I played Vermintide in 2015. And I haven't gotten into any of the Warhammer tabletop stuff myself.
Mission failed. We'll get them next time.
But I'm at least aware of it now, where previously I didn't know what the fuck it was. And I've also bought other Warhammer fantasy games because of that.
It did its job.
Yeah, it did its job. It made me at least a fair weather fan of this intellectual property, which I previously had no attachment to. That's kind of the mindset that I think that Games Workshop has taken, and I would say that it's paid off because you have games like Blood Bowl and Total War, Warhammer, Vermintide, Gothic Armada, and those are kind of some of the ones I'm thinking of off the top of my head, but those are games that are generally really well received by people who've played them. And then there's some smaller kind of games that were only kind of well received by a very specific community or people who are already really interested in that type of game. There was a Space Hulk game that was like that. There was a Mordheim game that was like that. I believe that there was a Necromunda game that came out last year that was like that. That's why that happened with the Warhammer licenses, because it's got a strong enough brand presence that a bad game is not going to hurt it at all. And it has a chance to bring in new people because it's effectively a giant walking ad.
Yeah, I mean, all they need is like one game out of like 10 to be
good, yeah.
And if they get a super great game, then they win.
Yeah, exactly. As far as other licensed games go, I have to imagine that that's probably the same concept that most of them are working with. Like, it's just, I imagine if you're working with a brand where the intellectual property has an astonishingly large amount of value, I have to imagine that you, as the developer, are actually paying more to the property owner, like as a licensing fee. I imagine they're not paying for the development, or like they're not paying for very much of the development at all. You're actually probably paying them to even use their property in your game.
It's like the same thing with all the movie licensed games. It's about trying to get the...
Yeah, that was just advertisement.
Yeah, it's just more advertisement, because, I mean, the movie probably takes like a couple years to make, whereas the video game, to make it good, would probably take...
Longer.
As much, or longer.
Longer and more money.
So, for them, it doesn't make sense to invest a whole lot. They just want it like, hey, get this game out so that people now know about the movie. If they buy the game as well, then we get to double dip.
I feel like Star Wars was kind of like that. Didn't all of the Star Wars games come out alongside the movies? You can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I thought that was what happened. The game released, and then later that year...
A lot of them did, yeah.
I know that fuck me, Avengers, we made fun of that in some of the earlier episodes of our podcast. That's a game.
That came out after, though.
Yeah, I know, that's what I mean. It completely missed the boat, and I have to imagine that really hindered its sales and its market impact.
Oh, I see. Yeah, it should have come out right around the time Endgame came out.
It should have come out before the fucking Endgame came out, or Infinity War. Was that the third?
Infinity War was the one before. Endgame was the big cinematic finale.
I feel like that was a huge missed opportunity.
Even though it's kind of funny because Avengers came out in the year that pretty much there was no Marvel films because they're all either on Disney Plus or they're getting ready for their next wave of movies.
Yeah, they didn't need to release anything else that year. Fucking Endgame was in theaters for, it was in theaters for a very long time. Considering most movies are in and out of theaters in between 2 and 4 weeks. I think Endgame was in theaters for 6 or 7. It was in for a really long time. Avatar?
It had to beat Avatar, yeah.
James Cameron directed. James Cameron presents. James Cameron as James Cameron.
James Cameron presents Avatar 2 through 4 Boogaloo.
That motherfucker's a lot like Hideo Kojima, where he puts his name all over the fucking place.
He still wants to make the other movies, but I feel like...
He's crazy.
It's dead. It's gone. You needed to have that shit out several years ago.
Years ago, yeah. I was going to say, Avatar came out when I was in, grade 10. So
name one character from Avatar. Go.
Mark.
Not the Airbender.
Is Mark the name of the main character?
I don't fucking know.
I don't know, that just seems like a generic...
That's just a good guess.
Yeah, or Bob or Steve, generic fucking army man names. James. James Cameron as James Cameron.
As James Camerono.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess I didn't really give you a whole lot to say during that segment, but that's I think that's the long and the short of why that happens. It's if the brand is strong enough, and if it's getting a licensed game, it probably is strong enough, then it doesn't matter how badly the licensed game performs, because whatever the brand's primary revenue source is, it will just continue to make money from the fans who like it. Best case scenario, the game that's made is good and it brings in new fans.
Yep. I mean, that's what EA did with all the Harry Potter games when, Harry Potter was in the movies.
There was Harry Potter games? Besides the Lego ones?
When the Harry Potter movies were coming out, they always came out with the Harry Potter game.
Holy shit.
For each year. Even year 7 that got 2 parts got 2 different games.
Oh, man.
Unfortunately, EA decided that it was going to do Harry Potter Call of Duty at the time for that.
So you just run around shooting spells at people?
Yes.
Oh my god, how have I never heard of this?
Because that's all that they could really do with it. They weren't going to be able to...
Harry Potter video games, official EA site. Oh my god. So the first couple of years, they use I assume, what the character models were supposed to look like. And then from Goblet of Fire onward, they just used the movie posters with Daniel Radcliffe as like the fucking thing. So Deathly Hallows Part 1 is the one where you just run around shooting people?
And 2, yeah.
Deadly enemies lurk around every corner. Fight Voldemort's minions, including Death Eaters, Snatchers, and Dementors. Overcome a host of fierce creatures attacking on instinct alone. No other Harry Potter game has had this level of action! Exclamation mark. Is there a trailer? No, this is just a bunch of text. Okay.
I'll show you later.
No, I'm Googling this right now. Fuck you. Trailer.
With the power of editing.
Yeah, you'll just remove me dicking around here. Oh, God.
You found it.
Oh, God. They're so weird looking. I mean, Voldemort looks normal because he was already fucking dumb looking, but the rest of them look... Yep, this is a third-person cover-based shooter. Oh my god.
Yeah, that's what they did with it. They surprisingly did not fuck up years 1 through 6, but yeah, this was just a Call of Duty shooter.
This is hilarious. No, this isn't even Call of Duty. It's third person. This is Uncharted. Oh my god. Yep, it's cover-based shooting. I can't believe it. This is hilarious. I'm laughing on the inside. I'm not laughing on the outside. This is truly twisted. I can't believe this exists.
And they did it again.
Thank you, Blockbuster UK, for preserving this trailer so I could watch it.
You're their only view in the entire month.
Yeah, probably.
Who the fuck's watching this?
It's somebody who discovered a piece of history from 2011. Holy shit.
And that's my example of at least a shitty one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, there's Warhammer games, there's like a ton of fucking shitty ones, but there's a number of them that I think are pretty alright. That's coming from somebody who started it, like I said, is not a fan of the franchise. So really, it comes down to the fact that the people who are, I guess I'm reiterating the point, but like it comes down to the fact that people who own the intellectual property, if it's strong enough, don't have to invest in it, video game, because it doesn't matter how well the video game does. It's basically just a fucking ad for them. If it happens to be good, that's great, but they don't care as much about that. So with that, do we want to get into the games we've been playing?
Wait.
Oh.
Before we move on, we have to acknowledge something.
F-Zero?
F-Zero.
F-Zero.
Da 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 da. We've said it more than 10 times. Now it'll come true.
Maybe. I just...
On the Nintendo Wish.
The Nintendo Wish. Just as like an aside, now that Pokemon Snap, or New Pokemon Snap,
Yeah, I always knew.
has come out, Thomas said that as long as an F-Zero game comes out, the Switch will be the best Nintendo console ever. Unironically. There's no hint of irony
fair.
in that.
No,
He's
I get what he
100%
means.
serious. He likes Pokemon Snap, and he likes... I think he played the Let's Go game and F-Zero, and I think that's all he cares about from Nintendo. I'm probably forget. I feel like I'm forgetting one other thing in there, but he'll yell at me for forgetting it if I did forget it. But thank you for the question again, Thomas. That was a really good question.
Yes, thank you. And now we've finished off one big ongoing joke after we decided to skip that for
A number
10
of episodes
or so.
Yeah, I forgot. I thought we did it already, but I did.
Nope.
There you go. We forgot so hard that I actually
Kept meaning
forgot.
to bring it up, but now it's done. All right, on to the games we've been playing.
I don't remember whose week it is.
You know what? We're changing it up this week.
Okay.
We're gonna alternate.
Okay.
You go first.
So I know you bitch and complain every time I do nothing but talk shit on the podcast about games. So do you want me to start with the good or the bad this week?
When do I?
You complained after I complained about Yakuza Like a Dragon for like 3 episodes in a row.
I didn't complain about. Did I complain? I probably complained about. Okay, you can start with the mediocre.
The mediocre is somewhere in between. Okay, that's Dishonored 2 then. I didn't pick anything up in the Golden Week sale, and I realized that was a critical error because I had nothing to play on the weekends when I'm not at home. So I guess for people who don't know, on the weekends I go to Miranda's place because I live on my own. So even though we're in lockdown, I'm allowed to visit like one person. So I visit her every weekend. And then when I'm over there, we end up sharing her computer for games. So I'll end up usually taking the computer and then she plays stuff on the Switch and then we chat while we're playing in the same room because that's what we do as a couple. But yeah, I didn't have anything to play, so she's just like, you want to play Dishonored 2? And I'm like, sure, I'll play Dishonored 2. I really liked Prey. I wasn't super big on Dishonored back when I played it a number of years ago, but I figured with having played Prey, I'd have a newfound, and like Hitman and other games with like those two were kind of the big ones that have a lot of systemic systems in them and gameplay interactions that I would enjoy Dishonored 2 more. And I
Was wrong.
kind of the entire time I'm playing it, I think I said this to you on the weekend, I feel like I've played a better version of it already because I have.
And it's Prey.
Yeah, it's Prey. You can see all of the little bits and pieces where Prey was influenced in Dishonored's design and how it's like, oh, like here's this thing that I can see like the prototype of. It's like it was implemented in this way in Prey, but in Dishonored you can see like, oh, here's where they like learned that this system is kind of stupid and then they changed it so that it was better in Prey. So there's a lot of that I'm seeing while playing it, and it makes sense because like game development is iterative. You're learning as you're going. Arcane put out Dishonored 2. They made a bunch of decisions about how it would work, and then when they made Prey, they learned from some of those decisions and implemented changes that added a lot more good, meaningful improvements to what they were going for.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm looking at the timeline. Dishonored came out in 2012, Dishonored 2 2016, and then Prey was the year after.
Yeah, I feel like they were working on Prey a lot in between there, but when I gotta imagine that some of the systems and designs that were in Prey, they were implemented in the way they were because whatever it was in Dishonored 2 didn't work as well. And then the other thing is like Hitman 1 and Hitman 2 from the World of Assassination trilogy. Those games, I think, are better as well.
That's fair. Who did you play as?
Emily.
I know it's okay.
She's like the canonical choice.
Mm-hmm.
I think that she actually has more interesting powers, but I don't really know that for a fact. I remember reading that was like an anecdote from a number of players online that Emily had the more interesting powers of the two characters. So, but yeah, so that aside, the game it's fine. There's like a lot of interesting systemic stuff you can do in it, and I'm having a lot of fun goofing around with that. But it feels really limiting in that stealth is the only valid option. You have to be sneaky snack or rely on running back into cover and hiding because it's really easy to get overwhelmed very quickly by enemies. And you don't really have a great way of fighting back against them. There's like a couple skills that kind of let you fight back against them, but if you get dogpiled by like 8 dudes at once, which can't happen, then you are dead.
That's fair. I played Dishonored before, so...
Yeah, I would hazard a guess that if you've played through the game already before and you're familiar with the level layouts, or if you've like already meticulously explored the area via stealth, then you would be prepared to like, okay, now I'm going to go 100% Kaizo and run out and like just kill everyone in this crazy long combo. But when you're like first dropped into a level, you don't have the necessary knowledge about how the space is organized and how it functions to make those decisions accurately in a way that won't just get you killed. I think that's a little bit frustrating because it just feels like I'm a lot more limited in what I am allowed to do because it's just like a lack of map knowledge, and the first person perspective doesn't help with that at all. In Hitman, having a third-person camera is it like helps you see the area and take in the area in a much broader, easier. Like you can just be like walking in a direction and then just swivel the entire camera around you and get a feel for what the area you're exploring is like, and then you can get like, oh hey, there's like an exit over here, an exit over here, an exit over here. In first person, I find that a lot more difficult to do because it's fucking first person. You have a much more limited viewport as to how you kind of can see the world. And that also means that it's a little bit harder to like when you're running away from somebody to actually like look around and figure out what your options are.
Yeah, no, I get what you mean. The Hitman games are really good for being able to explore the whole level and then do the assassination. Because you don't have to really worry about, oh, is the guard gonna fucking kill me? Because not everyone's on high alert.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Like almost the entire level in Dishonored is like you have to be in the shadows or running because everyone's always on high alert. In Hitman, you have the ability to hide in plain sight based on your disguises. So there's a lot of times where you can leisurely stroll through an area provided you have the appropriate disguise. And I really like that because it means that you're not just skulking around in the shadows the entire time. There's moments where you can freely explore if you just give yourself the correct disguise. And getting the correct disguise is usually not that difficult to do. So there's like a lot of moments where you're kind of like hidden until you get a disguise and you can move freely. Except around certain NPCs who will recognize your disguise and see through it. But I'm not as huge a fan of just kind of like crawling through the mud all the time in environments. I don't find that as fun. And that's like, how Dishonored approaches things.
You don't like realism.
Well, yeah, as real as it gets. And then like a lot of the powers are also focused around stealth instead of, not stealth, which is something that I think Prey does a lot better. It's just like a lot more utility with the different abilities you get. And I feel like a lot of the abilities in Dishonored are very centered around stealth or have like stealth applications and not much else, which is a little bit frustrating. And that's kind of my other big problem with it is that the way the upgrades works, I think makes the game less fun to play. in each level, similar to the first game, there are upgrades scattered through it, like passive upgrades, and then like the things you use as skill points scattered throughout the levels. And almost all of them are off of the critical path.
They're the runes, right? Or something like that?
Yeah, runes. And like bone charms are the passive abilities for anyone who's
Right.
actually played the game and who's listening. All of the bone charms and runes are off of the critical path, or like most of them are off the critical path. So that gives you an incentive to explore the level fully, but that also means that you're going to spend a lot of time not working on the objective or working on anything related to the objective, which means that you're usually combing through the levels very slowly and very meticulously, and there's multiple paths through the levels, and instead of just choosing a path and sticking with it and finding an interesting way to beat a linear sequence of challenges, instead, I find myself roaming around these levels like they're an open world thing, and I just discover like almost all the pathways, and I get through them using numerous solutions, and I'm like, oh, it would have been really cool if I like replayed this level and went through it this way. But I have to do that to get all of the upgrade materials because they give you access to more abilities.
It's level based, but like you go proceed from level to level. You're not playing it like as you said, the roguelike, repeat the same mission over and over again like Hitman.
Yeah, so in that way, I'm just spending like an extraordinary amount of time in each level getting all of the upgrade materials because why wouldn't I? And that isn't honestly that fun. I find that when you're actually like playing through the missions the way the developers kind of intend you to, they are pretty alright, but there's so much downtime when I'm just wandering through whatever the fuck area getting upgrade materials for leveling up my character. And there's no time incentive. There's no like force that pushes you forward at all. This is part of why I put out that tweet on the weekend where I'm like, I've been thinking about how time affects the way we look at video games, because the fact that there's no time limits here means that I'm not playing the game in the most fun way possible, where the most fun way possible would be me getting pushed to make interesting decisions about which upgrades I can afford to spend time getting, and then like running to get them, and then continuing on with the mission, instead of like very slowly and very meticulously combing each level, picking up everything in the most boring, pedestrian way possible, and then proceeding to the next area or the next level when I've cleared out the entire level already. And it's like the game doesn't do anything to prevent me from doing that, so I'm not just going to not do it on the basis of it making the game more fun because I want to have all the powers because the powers are cool. And then like Prey does solve this issue in how it's designed. So that's another point for why I'm like, oh yeah, like Prey's a better game. I just think that like Hitman has done systemic stealth. Actually, I think Metal Gear Solid 5 did systemic stealth games better as well. But like as far as like an arcane game goes, I think that Prey capitalizes on the strength of the way that they design their games a lot better than Dishonored 2 does. So in that regard, it feels like I'm playing a little bit of a lesser experience. That said, I know that I've voiced before, I think that Deathloop looks really cool, and I think that it looks like it has some more stealthy options, but it also has some like very aggressive attack-based options, and I think that that is the correct way to do that kind of a thing. And it has like, because it's on a time loop and a time schedule, you have a reason to like to move forward, to keep going, to keep pushing forward. And I think all of those things are going to help to fix some of the problems I've identified with Dishonored 2. And evidently, I'm not the only person who thinks that they're problems, because the game designers designed an entire game that looks like it solves a lot of the issues I'm having right now for their next game. The people at Arcane, I think they've got a really smart team of developers and designers over there, so I'm not going to hold this against them. Dishonored is a game that was released, and it's something that they appear to have learned from, at least in one of their future releases. So I'm still excited to see what Deathloop is like, even though I'm not getting on a lot well with this. I think if I'd played this first and then Prey, I probably would have liked it better, but the fact that I've played what I think is a superior game beforehand is kind of painting my experience in a bit of a negative light, if that makes sense.
No, it totally makes sense. I mean, if you play, like, a lot of people really like the new God of War game, but if they go back and play the old ones,
oh yeah,
like they're okay, but like
they're completely different experiences.
They're completely different experiences. So some people are like, oh, this is not really what I wanted from.
Or I know Ian, Adventure Rules, listens to the podcast as well, and
him with Yakuza
really
like a Dragon too.
Yes, exactly.
Zero. He didn't really like the story part because it was just a rehash because it was.
Yeah, well, because Like a Dragon is a rehash of Yakuza fucking 0 and Yakuza 1, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, well, you played the rehash of the rehash first. 0 doesn't have as much of the quality of life features as what's in Like a Dragon, so that I can understand being really frustrated with as well, because Like a Dragon does have a lot of really nice quality of life features that Yakuza was lacking. I guess I'll say one positive thing after we kind of spent a bunch of time in this podcast shitting on it. But anyway, that's kind of where I'm at with Dishonored. So I feel like fundamentally I've played better games than Hitman and Prey, but it's like okay. If you haven't played either of those games yet, I would say check out Dishonored first and then go play the Hitman, World of Assassination trilogy, and Prey. They deliver on those concepts better. Okay, so that was my thing. So now it's your turn.
Okay, I'll go with my mediocre one as well. I played the rest of the Caligula Effect, and I finished up the story. There was a few plot twists that were okay, so wasn't the worst. But something that Mads said on your stream was that the villains are a lot better than the main cast.
Oh, yeah.
Design-wise and, like, even just character-wise, like, I almost want to root for the villains more than the main cast.
There's an argument for saying that does make a story more, like if a story has a very compelling villain, that helps a lot with making the story more interesting and more memorable, but...
You gotta have a good cast as well. I feel like you have to have a good balance between the two, and they had slightly better villains than they did the heroes.
And they're gray protagonists.
All in the shade of gray, whereas at least the villains had some color. They were still a little gray, but they at least had color.
Did you platinum the game?
So...
That's a no, because you didn't say yes right away.
I have not. I've kind of put that one aside for a tiny bit, because it's a brutal one, because you have to get to level 99... And I finished the game at like level 33.
Jason, you don't have to platinum every game you play.
I know, but I want to.
Oh, God. Broken human being.
How dare you say I'm a broken human being?
With my 1,000 hours in Monster Hunter. And my double platinum trophy in Monster Hunter.
Yes, no kidding. You have to befriend a lot of the students, and then... So when you get, like, the students, you have to get them to, like, rank 2 to be a friend, and then you can more or less unlock the other people in their tree. So it's like this game, but you have to keep finding them, and they're all in certain locations within the dungeons and then the areas, so it just becomes this insane nightmare. Fortunately, there's a frickin' Excel document that tells me everything I need to know about every single character.
Sorry, is this in the game, or is this a fan-made one?
No, this is a fan-made.
Okay, that's nice that the community has a resource for it.
Yeah, I can only say it's on for the Vita. I don't know if they've got one for the Caligula Effect Overdose, which is on more modern consoles. But maybe they even addressed that in that one. I haven't actually. I'm not going to play the Caligula Effect Overdose. I can't. I don't want to.
Not again. Not like this.
Not again. Per Mad's recommendation, I watched the first episode of the anime.
Oh my God, did you actually?
Yes.
Oh shit, what did you think?
It's run-of-the-mill. It's still not the greatest, but I probably didn't get to the point where he's saying, like, it's a train wreck. Because at least the first episode is about world building a little bit, so understanding that your characters are in a simulation.
So it takes a while before it goes off the rails.
Probably takes a while to go off the rails. I don't know if I want to commit to all 12 or 13 episodes of this. Maybe with a few drinks in me, I might. We'll see.
Holy Jesus. For context, I almost never see Jason drink alcohol, so the fact that this has driven him to drink is just astonishing. This must be some truly just ass-tier stuff. Well, I guess it's not even ass-tier. If it was ass-tier, at least it'd be funny.
There's one part... This is just me being picky about the animation. There's one part where they're doing this walking, and they're not moving. Like, there's no... I'll show you it later, but...
This is some shonen-style fucking shit where they just move in the background and bobbing the characters up and down.
They're not even moving in the background. Like, I'll show you it later. It's pretty fucking funny.
I guess for now, I will take your word for it.
So, you basically have to befriend all 500 students or so to solve these class mysteries.
Shit.
I might be wrong about that, but you have to befriend quite a bit because they're all in, like, these tree chains. Like, some of them, like, so the ones you have to solve are, I think they're highlighted with, like, double circles. But in order to unlock them or solve some of their problems, they're like, oh, make 2 of the people around me, like, 5 ranked. So you have to solve their problems first. But then, oh no, you have to solve 2 of their friends to make them 5 stars first.
Oh my
So it becomes this,
God.
like, god damn it.
It's a web of dependencies.
Yes.
It sounds like some
Exactly.
of the fucking software I work on at work.
I looked at some of the marketing material for the Caligula Effect, and they were like, oh, you can befriend over 500 students. Okay, this is a great example where more is not greater. Less is much better. That's why Persona works where you have all those social links, because there are not that many. Well, there's still lots of them, but like they don't drive you insane. There's like 20 to 30 social links in Persona, but at least you can manage that, where it feels like this is just mind-numbing insanity, and why are there 500 students that I have to befriend? You don't even use any of them.
I was going to say, I feel like in Persona it works a lot better because you have a much more personal connection to the characters.
Yeah, and you have to get through 10 ranks, you get dialogue with them. These characters you interact with, they're just like, hey, hi, welcome, I'm also in the library, let's chat about a book, and that's it. Bye.
That's pretty
My
lame.
rank went up with you. Cool. Bye. I can't believe there's a sequel coming out for this shit.
Well, it's not already out. I thought it was already out.
No, the Caligula Effect 2 got announced in like the last month or two, I think.
Oh.
I think that's part of the reason why I wanted to finally play it, because I was like, oh, okay, there's a sequel for this. Maybe this isn't so...
Maybe this is
Never
good.
Never mind.
And that's the moment when he knew he fucked up.
Always. Yeah, I'm probably not going to mention the Caligula Effect on the podcast anymore. If I finish it, I finish it. If I don't, I don't.
Okay.
Platinum-wise, I mean.
Yeah, I got that.
What else have you... you want something good?
I want to do something bad. I want to piss all over. So,
Alright, what are you pissing over?
you know I played Titanfall 2, obviously. If you've listened or you've read my blog recently, go read my article about Titanfall 2.
I can't believe that you hated Titanfall 2. I can't believe it.
I didn't hate it. I just thought it was kind of unremarkable.
That's the same thing!
Clearly.
Some people,
So-
that's the same thing.
Yeah, well,
You
those
didn't
people
love
are-
it? Fuck you then.
Yeah, those people are stupid, though. So the other reason I did that is because I was playing It Takes Two with Miranda. But that's not what we're going to talk about. I'm going to talk about that when we're actually done it. So while I was there, Titanfall, I got it while it was on sale. And when it was on sale, so was Mirror's Edge. And I'm like, oh man, I've heard a ton of interesting like people have always said that Mirror's Edge is really interesting as a title. So I was like, oh, I'll go ahead and pick that up. And because it was only like $2. So I figured, like I can check it out, see what like all the hype is about. That game is a piece of shit.
Now, why is it a piece of shit? I've only played part of the sequel, so give me a rundown of what's not working.
Oh boy. Okay.
Oh no, where to start? Great.
Yeah, that's what that was.
Okay, so there's the parkour. Why does the parkour not work?
Parkour doesn't work because it's very difficult to maintain any sense of momentum because the controls are overly clunky and incredibly fiddly. In a lot of platforming games that I've played, there is a little bit of wiggle room that's given to the player so that you can do things without having to be 100% precise. That helps to maintain a sense of fluidity without requiring you to just be like super precise on everything. I know some people really like precise platformers, but I'm not as big on super precise platforming. I know if you see me play like Hollow Knight, you might be like, what are you talking about? But Hollow Knight gives you a lot of gimmies.
Yeah,
I think you're
make a lot
gonna,
of mistakes.
maybe a bit of a spoiler, you're gonna mention Celeste later, right?
I am, yes.
Yeah, so Celeste gives you a lot of gimmies as well to maintain a great sense of flow. Mirror's Edge does not have a lot of those affordances for the player. So there's like a lot of times where I'd be like, oh, I'm going to like bounce off this wall and then bounce up this other wall and grab on this ledge. And I would do like all of the things, but I'd be like just a little bit off of where the game wanted me to be to grab onto the ledge, and then it just wouldn't grab the ledge and I'd fall down. I'm like, well, that's stupid. So I imagine that's like a skill thing that you can overcome, but the fact that it's like in first person also does not help at all. It's just like very, very difficult to platform in first person.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the stuff I've been trying to do, I've like looking at the levels and I'm like, okay, clearly you can do this particular movement in here, but I'm having a really hard time doing it because the camera's constantly whipping around because it's attached to the character's face.
Yeah, well, I mean, in third person, you can at least see the platform under you.
Yeah.
Yeah, first person, you can't.
Yeah, I was like running beside a thing that I should be very clearly be able to like hop up onto, and I'd like kind of tilt the camera towards it and press the button to do the thing, and it would just be like, you're not looking directly at the thing, so it just made my character like jump instead of, like crawl up on the thing I wanted to climb up on top of. So in that way, I felt like the game was just like, it wasn't very good at reading what I wanted it to do without me being super like ultra specific about it. For me, that was very frustrating. I'm like, it's just really hard to gain a sense of flow in the game.
And there's no, like, difficulty level. It's just one standard difficulty.
I don't actually know.
I don't know either.
I think I just chose to play the game on normal, but because that's usually what I do with games. But I don't think that changing it would have fixed these things. Like, a lot of the problems felt like this game is just old and unrefined in its design. Like Titanfall, for example, like all of the things I'm complaining about in Mirror's Edge are Titanfall doesn't have as verbose of a parkour mechanic set in it, but like all of the things in Titanfall are designed in the way that I'm describing, where it gives you that like little bit of wiggle room where it just like if you're close enough, it just fucking fixes it for you and lets you continue on without stopping you dead in your tracks because you didn't do it exactly the way the game wanted you to do it. Just as like an example, or like Doom Eternal's another game that does the exact same thing where it's like, oh, you're close to the ledge, we're going to snap you right up to it then. Because you were close enough, we don't give a fuck. We want you to just keep running around and maintain your sense of momentum.
Yeah, no point in ruining that.
Yeah, precisely. And then like the other big thing is that the levels in Mirror's Edge are designed like complete dog shit. I might just be a platforming snob because I've played a lot of really good platforming games over the last 27 years. But the level design in the first couple levels of Mirror's Edge is some of the worst shit I've ever seen in any video game, period.
Like, are these like the tutorial areas, or are you saying like the...
The tutorial area was a guided tutorial where somebody ran ahead of you and showed you the path you were supposed to take through the level. And okay, that's fine. Even though I was kind of like looking at this space and I was like, okay, it's not really, if that person wasn't showing me where to go, I wouldn't have necessarily known where I was supposed to go. And then you get into like first main level and the very first thing the game tells you is like so I was playing on keyboard and mouse, press Alt or Tab, one of the two, and it will push the camera in the direction that you're supposed to go. And I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ. So instead of just designing the levels in a way that naturally and unobtrusively leads the player, like, you know, most games do, because most games are designed really well, this game just fucking puts a button that points you in the direction you're supposed to go, because the levels are just constantly whipping you around. They're just not designed in a way to kind of funnel the player where that you want them to without them realizing it. I guess a really good example of this, I don't like Uncharted very much, but I gotta give it to Naughty Dog. They designed their games in the set piece moments where you're like running away from people in such a way that the use of color, the camera angle, the lighting, and the way the levels are designed will naturally push you towards the areas that they're expecting you to go in. And then you as a player, you don't have to think about it because you're just like getting all of these cues that are pointing you in the direction you're supposed to go. And even when you're not in the chase sequences, they have those kinds of methods being used to kind of guide you down the paths you're expected to go down. The same sorts of things can be seen in Tomb Raider. That's one that I'm a lot more familiar with because I've played a lot of those. Even shit like Mario, right? Like it's just like the 3D Mario games are still designed in such a way where they put things in your path to help lead you the way the developers want you to go instead of you just wandering around aimlessly.
Whereas this feels like it's just aimless.
Yeah, for me, the kind of moment that broke me with level design was when I was being chased by a bunch of police and I climbed up this ladder and then I climbed to the ladder and was facing nothing. And then I pressed the show me where to go button and it like flipped me around and pointed me towards a building across the road. And I'm like, okay, I clearly cannot make this jump. And then I looked around and I was like, there's nothing here for me to interact with. So then I just like tried to jump over the gap and didn't make it. And I was like, okay. And then I went back and is there something I'm missing here? I think the fourth time I was redoing the section running up, I noticed before I got to the ladder that there was a zip line at the top. So when I actually climbed to the ladder, I turned around fully, saw the zip line, and took the zip line to the next building. But like,
I don't know, that sounds like maybe you problem.
I mean, maybe, but it's like one of those things where it's like, if the player climbs up a fucking ladder, don't put the next object they're meant to interact with directly behind them.
That is
like,
a weird choice. Yes.
When they press the fucking show me where to go button, don't point them. The fucking button didn't point me in the direction, like it didn't show me the thing I was supposed to interact with when I did it. It just pointed me towards the next building. So I didn't even see that there was a zip line. So yeah, I was just like, okay, this is fucking stupid. You know, like put the zip line in front of their face so they see it and go, oh, that's where I'm supposed to go next, instead of just putting everything all over the place because I don't know. So yeah, and then like the following level afterwards, I was just trying to like get up. I was like walking beside a ledge and I just wanted to like climb up the ledge while a helicopter was shooting at me. And Faith, that's the name of the character, would just not climb up this ledge while I was moving forward. And then I like just ran into the wall and I'm like, okay, fuck this game. My life is too short to be wasting on this dreck.
And when you sent me the fuck this game?
Yeah, that is exactly when I shut the game. I haven't uninstalled it yet, but it's like I sent you just like, fuck this game.
Do it now. Do it live.
Okay.
Maybe don't actually. Maybe it'll
control panel
fuck with the recording. No, I might fuck with the recording.
Actually, you're right. I won't do that. You're right. That might actually fuck with the recording. I don't want to mess with the recording. It's like it came out in 2009, so it's old. Obviously, certain things like Doom Eternal and Titanfall 2 aren't fair comparisons because they're much newer games. So, they have had time to develop and improve first person platforming in a meaningful capacity, probably building off of some of the systems and the groundwork that were laid by Mirror's Edge. I got to imagine that if you played this game back in 2009, it probably felt like this crazy, like revolutionary thing, right? But when you've played newer first person games that have platforming elements in them that have matured well beyond that point, it feels so old and crusty that it's just like, oh, it's just not an enjoyable experience at all. That's it. That's all I gotta say. What's next on your list?
Well, you mentioned Celeste, so I'm going to talk about Celeste. And
Okay.
no, it's not bad. I only have good games left. So
Yeah, I only have good
That's a
games
good thing.
from this point forward as well.
Woo! It's the good corner.
So yeah, you kind of lambasted me for not telling you that Celeste was good, but I wrote a review about Celeste after I finished playing it. It's been on my blog for like 3 years now, so I already did my duty. But yeah, you enjoyed Celeste.
Yes. So when you mentioned the collection of games last episode,
Oh yeah, the itch.io
that
stuff.
reminded
Yeah, it's in
me
there.
about Celeste, and I was like, okay, you know what? I have a copy I bought on sale a while back. I haven't bothered downloading it. I will do that, and I will play that. I haven't played a platformer in forever, and wow, it is probably one of the best platforms I've played in a really, really long time.
Yeah, it's extremely well made.
Yeah, it is. I played the entire game, got about almost 80 of the strawberries, so I got quite a few of the collectibles on the way. Those add a lot to the playtime, because if you just skip the strawberries, the levels are much shorter. It's just it's nice to have those challenges along the way in order to... because they're all optional. You don't have to do any of them. There's a funny scene. If you don't get any strawberries, they just kind of go at the end during the epilogue. They kind of go like, wow, this is like the worst pie ever. There's no strawberries in here.
What kind of a pie did you end up getting?
I think I got an okay pie.
Okay. I had more than half of the strawberries, so I got, I think, what was considered like a good one, but not like the perfect one.
Near the end, I just kind of wanted to finally climb the mountain, so
That's
kinda
fair.
just speed run to that, and then I was like, okay, I'll go figure out the puzzles for all these extra strawberries later.
I really enjoyed that aspect of the game, especially because it added an extra layer of challenge. So, what's really cool about that particular bit is that it's kind of almost like you're choosing your own difficulty. Like, you can just ignore them and play through the game, and if it's already challenging enough for you, then that's fine. But if you want the extra challenge, then like a lot of the strawberries will provide that extra challenge for you.
I mean, some of the main puzzles, or the main platforming parts, a lot of them do, or some of them do have quite a bit of, like, you gotta have this 100% down, at least in the latter half of the game. There's not a whole lot of, like, wiggle room.
There actually is an extraordinary amount of wiggle room in Celeste. It's not a very precise platformer. You probably maybe didn't notice this, but you can jump after you've already... So there's a thing called coyote time. It's when you can jump after you've technically left the platform already. So if you jump within half a second of running off of the platform, you can still jump instead of falling down. And if you get close to the edge of a platform, Madeline will clip onto the platform instead of falling down. So you don't actually have to be pixel perfect on any of the jumps, which helps a lot with making them a lot easier.
Okay, maybe I mean, like, kind of the solution for the puzzles.
Oh.
You definitely need to know
Yeah.
100% what it's being intended. There's not like...
Yeah, you can't like just make it up as you go to get through an area. You kind of have to know exactly what you're going to do before you do it.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it does solve some of that problem with it, the ability to go into kind of these binocular...
I don't remember it because I never used that feature, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, but you can, like, see the rest of the level. I didn't use it either, but
Yeah.
whenever I was kind of fucking up, I was just like, I could have looked ahead and seen what was happening, but instead I'm going with a trial and error approach. Like, I've gone through this portion of the puzzle. Now I'm going to proceed on to the next one. Oops, didn't see that coming. There's no real good way of me being able to react to what was coming up, so...
Yeah.
Sometimes
That's
I feel
fair.
like it's a little unfair in that regard, but for the most part, because it's very, very generous with its checkpoints, I never really found that to be a huge concern.
It reloads quick, and it's, like you said, it's pretty generous with the checkpoints, which helps a lot with mitigating frustration.
You're in just like that.
Yeah, and I think it's really important in a game that can be as challenging as it is to not feel like it's punitive.
Yep, and I mean, there's, for anyone who needs it, there's an assist mode. I actually turned it on just to see kind of how it worked.
I have no idea how it works, so can you explain that to me?
Yeah, so there's 4 things. There's invincibility, which that's pretty self-explanatory.
So what does that protect you from?
Everything.
Oh, so like any like
Everything.
spikes or the ghostly moss
The
and
spikes don't hurt you. If you fall down to like the bottom of the area and you'd like die, you just keep bouncing.
Oh.
So there's no way to die in that mode.
Oh, okay.
There's like a part where like lava's going up and down on
So you can just like
top of the ceiling,
sit on the
and
lava?
It just moves out of the way.
Oh.
I'd almost say try it like once. It's really, really funny to just whip through a level like that.
Yeah, how it
it's
works.
really, really funny. And like how it won't let you die.
I
in
just
any of
want
that.
to die.
That one's kind of the really cool one. There's infinite dashes.
Oh, I could see that being really fun to play with, actually. I know it would completely break the game, but that sounds like it'd be really, like, once you've played through the game, kind of like normally, it'd be really interesting to play through the game with infinite dashes and to see how fast you can get through it.
Oh, yeah, you can get through the levels really, really fast.
Just, like, fly to the end.
Yeah. Oh, wait, there's speed. You can change the speed. That one's the one I'd say, like, if you're really having difficulty, but you still want to play with no invincibility and no extra dashes or jumps. Turn on the speed one because you can change it from anywhere from 100 speed and then down in 10 increments down to 50 speed. So you got it on half.
I was going to say that's a decrease in speed.
So you have enough time to react. That's enemies and yourself. So you feel like, oh,
yeah,
gotta time it there.
I think Hades actually had something like that as well, because I know that the heat levels let you increase the speed of everything by 20 and then 40%. I could have sworn they also had an accessibility thing that bumped it down to 80% speed, but I'm not 100% sure if that's true, if I'm misremembering that. I thought that was a thing, though. But it seems like kind of with more action-y type games, adding a kind of like a timer or like a speed adjustment thing seems to be a really popular accessibility feature.
It makes sense. You got twice as much time to think about what you're doing.
Yeah, if
or
you
at
don't
least
look ahead
reaction.
on. Yeah, I was gonna say. I think the bigger problem is with a lot of games is if you're in the habit of like looking ahead to make decisions before you need to make them, then it's easier. But if you just only ever see exactly what's right in front of your character, then it's like, oh shit, yeah, you need the extra time because you haven't been looking ahead to think about what you need to do ahead of time.
Yeah, but no, invincibility and infinite dashes breaks the game. It's really, really funny playing that.
I think it'd be really interesting to mess around with. I might do that if I play through Celeste again.
I mean, even if it's just a couple levels, because yeah, you can turn that on if you're having difficulty. One thing I will say is if you play on the normal difficulty, which is what they want you to play, like the standard one, there's no super easy way to just turn that on in the middle of like a run in a level. You have to save, which I think it saves you at that checkpoint, and then you exit the game, and then you have to reload, and then you can turn on assisted mode. There's no really easy way to just turn it on.
I would have thought there would be a thing in the options menu for it.
Within the game until like you exit out. That is one kind of little oversight, I thought. Not that it's a big one, because you can easily get back in with it, like in.
Yeah, and you said it saves exactly where you are in the level too.
I believe it saves exactly where you are in the level. I never actually finished or never saved in the middle of a level. I always had finished the level before I was done, so I don't know 100%.
What did you think of the story?
It was decent.
So that was one of the first times where I kind of felt like a game that I played managed to like it. I kind of touch on this in the Titanfall article, but I feel like a lot of games that I played tell stories, but the stories are completely disconnected from what's happening in the game. And Celeste, the story is, at least like part of Madeline's struggle, is illustrated through the platforming being really challenging. And it like ties in thematically with the story really well.
I really liked the chase sequences and stuff like that. When you're running away from
the bad thoughts.
Evil Madeline or...
Badeline?
Sure, Badeline.
I don't know if that's like an official name. I think that's what they call her, though. She's the bad Madeline.
I don't know. I don't think they're referring to this.
Oh, well.
There is that in the game, so...
Maybe I made that up.
It works. Story-wise, it was good. Yeah, I'm happy I played that.
If I had actually known that you hadn't already played it, I think I might have been a little bit more up in your face about playing it.
Well, now you don't.
So did you play it because you had it through the itch.io bundle?
No, I had it on my PS4.
Okay. Because if you had, then I would be like, okay, go play Pyre next, because that was also in that.
I missed the memo on that indie bundle.
That, and you also don't, I think at the time you weren't really playing anything on PC either, so.
That too.
Okay, so is it my turn now?
Yes.
I'm going to go with Them's Fightin' Herds next. So I got my arcade stick about 2 weeks ago now. So I was kind of like not investing a whole lot of time into Them's Fightin' Herds because I wanted to not build a bunch of muscle memory with the controller when I was going to be getting an arcade stick. I ordered the arcade stick. I got the arcade stick. I've had it for about 2 weeks. I've been having a shitload of fun using it in a fighting game. So it was a really good purchase. I don't know if I said this before on the podcast, but my kind of like line of thought was that when Miranda got me the tablet rather, for my birthday a few years ago, I could draw with the mouse digitally, but it really hurt my wrist to do that. And it was really slow going because drawing with a mouse is not the most comfortable thing in the world.
Really?
Yes, really. So when I got used to using the tablet, I was able to do things more comfortably, so my wrist wasn't getting sore, which is a huge plus, and I could do things quicker and better. So the logic with the arcade stick was, okay, I enjoy playing fighting games. When I got the accessory for drawing, my ability to draw digitally was more comfortable, it was easier to do, and I had better results. So what if buying the controller specifically designed for fighting games is more comfortable, it's easier to use, and it produces better results? And the answer to those questions is yes, it does all three of those things. Spending almost $100 on a pretty basic arcade stick. It's $100 Canadian, so like fucking nothing American, but actually I guess it'd be about the price of a $60 game American, but it's super comfortable. I can play for hours continuously and my hands don't get sore, which is fucking amazing. Every controller on the planet makes my gigantic alien hands sore after playing for like a couple of hours. This thing does not hurt my hands because it's got a little fucking ball on the end of a stick and then a bunch of face buttons that you use your open hand with on both of them, and it's just like so comfortable to use. Yeah, it's just like the feel of it is just great. And then like using it in the game there's some things that I think were easier to do on the controller, but in general most of the inputs are a lot easier to do on the arcade stick. So I've been having a lot of fun continuing to play Them's Fightin' Herds with this.
Has it increased your win to loss ratio?
Oh hell no, I'm still losing a ton. The people who play this game are almost entirely people who have played this game for so long that there's a massive fucking wall I have to climb before I can even reasonably compete with most of them.
See, that's what I don't like about fighting games, because it just feels like there's such a big barrier. I mean, I guess the same thing can be said about like
any competitive
Call of Duty, but maybe
game. So like the thing for me is that in a fighting game it's 1v1. It's always 1v1. In theory, you're going to lose 50% of the time, minimum, right? Because like someone always has to win and someone always has to lose. That's how the game is designed.
Is there a way to draw in that game?
I don't think so. There was no way to draw in Fantasy Strike. If there was a draw, it would like keep making you play. Fundamentally, there's someone always has to win, someone always has to lose. And because of that, in theory, 50% of your games are going to be losses. That's just how it is. If you're only having fun when you're winning, then you're in for a bad time. So a big part of the way that I view these games, a younger version of me wouldn't have been able to enjoy fighting games as much as I am now, because I like play a bunch of roguelikes now, and those games are just filled with failure until you finally start to overcome that failure. And I always find that with roguelikes, once I overcome the failure consistently a lot, I just stop playing them, because by that point I'm like, okay, I feel like I've figured the game out. With fighting games, there's just because you're playing a human opponent first off, and because there's so much to learn in any given fighting game, there's just like a lot to sink your teeth into and to continually improve at. So for me, it's much more about just playing the game and then just seeing that I'm slowly improving over time. I also, this week, I used to play in Toronto Top Tiers weeklies for Fantasy Strike. And obviously I'm not playing Fantasy Strike right now, but they also have a Them's Fighting Herd one done every other week. So on our recording week, so like the Tuesday of this week was the Them's Fighting Herds tourney. It was a 16-person bracket. I jumped in. I was the only new person who played this week. And a bunch of people were like, oh, yay, a new person. The first person I was matched against, because I was the newest person. So you familiar with how seeding works in tournaments?
Yes.
Okay, so you know that in a double elimination tournament, the top seed and the bottom seed are placed together in the very first round. You want to make it so that all of your best players, like knock out all of the, statistically speaking, the worst players as quickly as possible, so that you can get the best players playing each other in the later rounds of the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
So I was against the very best player, the guy who wins like more than half of the tournaments in my very first game.
Well, sucks to be you.
I think he was very nice about it. He chose a character he's the least familiar with from the cast. He also didn't go like full balls to the walls on me. So I actually ended up taking, in both of the games, since it's best 2 out of 3, I did take a round in both of the games. It was very apparent when I was like very close to potentially winning one of the games, he immediately just like wombo comboed the shit out of me. And I was like, okay. Potentially like one combo away from actually taking the game. And then he's just like, no, this is not happening.
You will not ruin my record, sir.
Yeah, but other than that, I thought that was like very nice of him to do. So then, like I didn't win that match, obviously. It's double elimination, so I got moved down to the loser's bracket. And my very first match in the loser's bracket was against somebody else who usually does really well. They decided to show me no mercy at all, which I'm totally fine with. It was like nice that Blue did that, but I don't hold any grudge against Sven for going all out on me, because it's like when a player goes all out, that gives me like a lot of opportunity to learn, right? Because they're playing to the best of their abilities, which means that I can like learn. Eventually, I want to be able to play and beat this person, right? So if they're going all out on me, that gives me a lot of opportunities to like, okay, these are things I need to do. These are things I shouldn't be doing. Like it makes that a lot clearer because they're not pulling any punches, so you don't get away with any bullshit. And yeah, Sven just fucking destroyed me. And then afterwards it was like, you were really, really good at playing defense. You didn't give me a free win there. But like, yeah, I've played the game for over 600 hours online and you've played for like 10 hours. So there was no way you were going to win that. And I'm like, yeah, but it's fine. Eventually I'll beat you. And they're like, that's a good attitude to have. I'm like, it might take a year, but eventually I'm going to fucking beat you. Because I was new, like right after I played my match, someone else who went 0-2 was like, hey, anyone up for some friendlies? And they like, I felt like they were very deliberately like kind of asking me because I was the other person who was like knocked out of the tournament at that point. I'm like, sure. So I played against them. This is somebody who's played for like 150, because whenever you're playing, it shows like how long the person you're playing has played the game online. So this person had played about 150 hours, and I forgot their screen name. I think it was like Elsa or something like that, or Elma. They didn't play their main. They played a bunch of other characters, kind of like what Blue did. And I had a lot of success playing them, and they were like, Jesus Christ, you just need to like work on some basic combos, and then you'll be doing a lot better than you're doing right now. Like Fantasy Strike, the biggest combo I had to do was like pressing 3 buttons. It's obviously a lot more complicated than them's Fightin' Herds.
Well, yeah, you said you wanted to go up another difficulty.
Yeah, fundamentally. But some of the concepts I did learn in Fantasy Strike carried over. So the character I'm playing, Arizona, a lot of her kit is designed around getting knockdowns and then taking advantage of knockdowns. The person I was playing was like, they said I was an Oki monster. So Oki's a term that's short for Okizeme, which is, I think, a Japanese word. I don't know what it means, but...
Not a clue. I can't help you.
Yeah, well, I know what it means in regard to fighting games. So, like, Oki is when you get a knockdown against your opponent, and then you immediately apply pressure to them. So that, basically, when you knock your opponent on their ass, you get up in their face, and you continue to apply pressure to them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a concept that I am very familiar with already because of Fantasy Strike. I would always, whenever I played Valerie or Setsuki, I made a very big point of constantly trying to get more knockdowns with them, especially Setsuki, because with Setsuki, if you get knockdowns, you just bamboozle the hell out of your opponent, and then they just make the wrong decision and you kill them. And that's fundamentally how I've been playing Arizona, because her whole kit's kind of designed around that. So when I saw it, I was like, okay, this is the character that is clearly for me. This is the playstyle that I like playing. So it's great to see that somebody who obviously a more experienced player, when I was playing them, recognizes like, you actually have the skill already, and you understand like a high level how to play your character, even though you've played this game for like almost no time at all. So I'm like, that's actually really reassuring to hear that it's like, okay, I at least fundamentally understand what this character's kit's designed to do. I just need to like spend a lot more time practicing the combos and like learning the nuance of her moveset and the rest of the cast so that I can, make better decisions while playing. So despite getting destroyed in my first bi-weekly tournament, I had a lot of fun, and I left with, the person who I was playing who said I had a really good Oki game. They were like, hey, you should like work on this. And I'm like, okay, cool. So that's like the thing I'm going to work on, hopefully. And then, maybe next bi-weekly demonstrate that I've actually learned the thing, or, maybe I still need to practice it some more and just continue working on that. Right now, for me, a big thing is just working on getting some like really basic bread and butter combos going. And then once I can do those reliably, I can start, transitioning over into some more advanced stuff. But yeah, that's kind of like the Them's Fighting Herds update. You might, just because of the fact that the tournament happens on the Tuesday of the week we record, you might end up hearing about this more often now.
Oh, this is bound to happen.
Kind of broad strokes. The controller's great, and I'm having a lot of fun with the game, and the community is great, even though it's full of monsters. But the monsters want me to enjoy the game that they have spent a lot of time playing and really enjoy, so they were very welcoming, and I felt like very welcomed into their community, so that was good. I look forward to continuing to get better.
I'm sure everyone's going to hear when Frosty gets his first win, regardless if he wins the first tournament. He's going to be...
As soon as I go 1-2, you know that meme where the guy in third place is like spraying champagne all over his face and shit? As soon as I go 1-2 instead of going 0-2 in a tournament, you better believe I'm posting that fucking meme all over Twitter.
Change all the characters to the horses.
Yeah, let's just put Arizona as the third place person.
Yeah, do that. That'd be good.
Yeah. That's the Frosty fighting game update. What's next for you, Jason?
I have one game left, and it's Dark Souls.
Oh, Jesus.
I finished Dark Souls.
Heyo, let's go.
I got to the end. An hour and a half before recording.
Oh, wow. Okay. Really impressive.
So, yeah, I had taken about a week and a half off from it. Part of that was to do with playing Monster Hunter, and I didn't really want to confuse the two button setups. There was a few things in Monster Hunter I was doing from Dark Souls that I'm like, oh, nope, that's not the dodge button, you dumbass. And then going back, I made the opposite problem. So.
Yeah, that sometimes happens with games that have somewhat similar combat systems but completely different controls.
Yeah, so I wanted to cleanse. I wanted to play a few extra games like Celeste and Caligula Effect. So I got back to it this week. Beat Seth the Scaleless. That was... he was only hard because you have to cut off his tail. And if you go for his tail, he does this like huge area of attacks. So
So
he was
obviously
just a pain
he doesn't
in the
want
ass.
you to hit his weak point.
It's not even a weak point. It's just an extra item that you can get from cutting off his tail, but you have to like get about 3/4 of his health off, or at least 2/3.
Oh, so you were playing Monster Hunter in Dark Souls.
Yeah, except Dark Souls is not nearly as forgiving, so
Yep.
a lot of attempts with that. And then when I proceed to do that, I was just fighting him normally, and he's a cakewalk if you play normally.
I feel like a lot of stuff you've done in this run of Dark Souls very specifically contradicts the easy way of doing things.
Yes.
Either because of New Game Plus kind of setup stuff or trophy related things.
Yeah, don't go for the achievements, yeah.
Snorlax and Pikachu in hard mode.
Yes. So yeah, I got to the end. The final boss is actually not as hard as I was expecting.
Was that the thing you posted on Twitter?
No, that was the fucking Bed of Chaos.
Oh, isn't that the worst boss in the game?
There's two types of bosses in these games. There's gimmick ones, and then there's just your standard ones that really want to kill you. The Bed of Chaos is literally go to the left or right side, your choice to start, hit a weak point. Then he comes into a second phase where he's partially on fire and the ground's collapsing, and you have to go to the other side and destroy that part. I learned later in a tutorial you can just use an arrow and cheat and do it like that and not be in his range, so...
It's not cheating if the game lets you do it.
Oh, no, okay, not cheating, sorry. A much easier method of doing that. So if you do have problems with that on your playthrough with Megan whenever that happens, she might even suggest that. I don't know. I learned that after, and I was like, oops.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that when I'm playing that game with Megan, she's just going to be like, all right, here's how you cheese this boss. And I'll be like, okay, let us eat delicious cheese.
And even then, the cheese might not be that easy.
Probably not.
But yeah, no, like, I killed the boss, but then he used his special pyromancy magic and killed me in the process, but I got the last laugh because he was dead.
So, did that still count even though you got...
Yes, it counted.
Nice.
I had to crawl all the way back and go get the souls and then light the fire, but it's worth not having to go through his bullshit because...
Yeah, but you come back, he doesn't, so...
Yeah, does the boss...
Or it doesn't? I don't know, it's a tree.
Doesn't. And then the final boss, he requires that you know how the fuck parrying works, which, if you're playing most of this game, you don't need to know that, so you better learn at some point.
That's odd.
Like one of the only ways to counter his attacks. easily.
You can't just dodge and hit, and the game ain't shit.
He's much harder if you try the dodging approach. I tried that with the first 3 attempts, and then I was like, nope, parry, and then it worked so much better. I got him on my first parry try. I got him to half health, and then he 1-2 KO'd me, and then I had to try like 10 to 15 times, and then I got him with parrying.
Oh my god, that sounds like when I fucking finished Sekiro against Sword Saint Ishin. I was fighting that fucking piece of shit for like 2 hours straight, and when I finally beat him, I did it without getting hit.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it is about games that really piss me off because of how hard they are, but like when I finally beat some of the bosses, I do it without ever getting... The same thing happened with Cuphead. I could not for the life of me beat the devil, and when I did, I think I fucking got an S rank on the fight, which I didn't even know was a thing. Because it's like, oh yeah, I didn't take any fucking damage. Yeah, exactly. You get so much practice, and you just like finally have that moment where you're like, instead of just being pissed off, you have like that just flow state, and you don't think about it. You just get through the entire fight perfectly.
Yeah, so I'm gonna try New Game Plus.
Oh, Jesus. The game's gonna stick a fucking spear through you and put you up on a fire and roast you like a pig.
I mean, I fought all the bosses other than Super Mega Snorlax, so at least I know what all the bosses can do.
That's true.
So it's the same thing like Sekiro. I played through that a second time and for the extra ending, and other than the new bosses, everyone was pretty much a cakewalk other than maybe 1 or 2 tries each. Like Lady Butterfly. Lady Butterfly in that Sekiro is like when you have to know how the fuck the game works. And once you know how the game works,
yeah, then it's
she's
a lot
really
easier.
Easy.
Yeah, I guess that's true. And you also don't have to unlock the Mikiri counter, which, by the way, should have just been fucking unlocked from the beginning of the game. That skill is fucking mandatory. I don't give a shit what anyone says. It should have just been unlocked in your default moveset.
But you have to earn it.
No.
Yeah, so Dark Souls.
Dark Souls,
that's
indeed.
1/3 of the Dark Souls franchise that I have to get through to complete my New Year's resolution.
To beat all the Souls games?
Beat all of the Dark Souls games, I think I said.
Do you still stand by the opinion that you think I'll hate the game?
Yeah, for the most part, yeah.
Oh, well.
I feel like when you beat Pikachu and Snorlax, you're going to have a much better time because that is the hardest fight in that game. Hands down. Even the final boss is not nearly as hard. And I didn't power level my character all that much. I got him to like level 80 something, and I beat the final boss.
Is there a level cap in Dark Souls?
I don't know. I've never reached it in either that or Bloodborne.
Let's do a quick Google here.
Probably.
710.
That's why I never got to it.
There is a level cap in Dark Souls. The maximum level is around 710 depending on your starting class. If you plan on doing PvP in the game, going far above level 120 can make it harder to find other players in your level range.
Really?
I'm guessing most of the builds are completely optimized around having the certain skills and nothing else.
Yeah, certain stats for sure. Anyway, that is all I have on Dark Souls.
Final game for me, go real quick here, is Cozy Grove, which is a game that you can't play real quick. So I think I mentioned before, it's kind of like Animal Crossing, but I think it recontextualizes a few things and sets goals in different ways that makes it less irritating to play.
Yeah, you said you had to play it like 60 minutes a day, and that's it.
Yeah, about 60 to 90 minutes of content is given to you every single day, and that's it. I'm still having fun with it. I've advanced my island a little bit further. They've put up some quality of life changes that I think were necessary for the game. So it's actually really nice to see that they're addressing problems where Nintendo just buried their fucking head in the sand. So like you couldn't craft multiple objects, and they put a patch out that made it so you could craft multiple objects. Some people were getting stuck at certain points with quests, so they couldn't advance the story further because they didn't have the necessary items. So they like loosened up some of the restrictions so you could advance the story even if certain items weren't spawning. They put in some tooltips that for things that I had already figured out because Miranda has been playing the game as well, so we've been kind of playing the game together and like sharing information and like learning about the game by, like one of us makes a discovery and then we tell the other person that. That's actually been really cool. I don't think I've ever actually played a game where Miranda and I were playing a game at the same time, making discoveries about the game at the same time, and then sharing information with each other. So that's actually been really cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
Although, she's been playing this game a hell of a lot more than I have. She just like fucking thinks it's really relaxing, so she'll just play the game for hours on end fishing. And that's something that I'm just not willing to do, so...
Okay then.
Although she's playing on the Nintendo Switch, so I keep getting patches like fucking weeks before she does. So like I had a bunch of quality of life fixes, and she's just like, oh god, I want these fixes so bad. And I'm like, yeah, you do.
But
And
then
then
the Nintendo tax.
yeah, basically. So I think the like the Switch version just got the update, even though I've had like most of the changes for like the past fucking like 14 days.
Yeah, it's cool to contextualize that, because, yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of like Animal Crossing, but instead of being focused on indentured servitude and capitalism and a bunch of other stupid bullshit, it's focused on like being your neighbors and making it a wonderful neighborhood. I don't feel like I'm selling this game super duper well, but if you like Animal Crossing, look at the trailer for this game and you'll probably like what you see. And just know that like a lot of the things that Nintendo refused to do in Animal Crossing New Horizons, this game has done. And the developers have proven that they're incredibly receptive to feedback.
Why don't you make like an article called The Better Animal Crossing?
That's probably what's going to happen. I have like a backlog of things that I want to write, and that was one of the things. I write down the ideas before I write the articles, but sometimes I do. Sometimes I just sit and write and then figure out what the article is afterwards. But like I wrote like Cozy Grove succeeding where Animal Crossing failed was the idea. But yeah, Cozy Grove, The Better Animal Crossing might be the fucking title if I actually write it.
It's simple and to the point.
Yeah. No, I've been trying to make my titles better on my articles. I don't know if you've noticed. Mike has been helping with that as well. He came up with the Firewatch title and the fighting game, the Getting to Read one. That was an iteration that I made on one of his suggestions because he's like, none of these are quite right. And then like a day later, I was like, what if it was like this, where I just tweaked it a little bit? And he's like, yeah, that's the perfect title. I'm like, all right, cool.
Mm-hmm.
So making titles that are not like super long and obnoxious has been something I'm trying to work on. But anyway, I'll stop there because we're kind of running in on time. So
that's our show for this week. Thank you all for joining. If you'd like to follow us on Twitter, that'd be great, at the Frosty Canucks. If you want to follow this podcast, we are available on Spotify, Stitcher, Anchor. You can follow me at Javim Animation, that's JAVM Animation. I'm going to finally get a replacement for my broken drawing tablet, so your stuff.
Okay, so you can follow me on Twitter at FrostyLight. That's kind of like a hub for all of the stuff. So I got just random thoughts out there as you get with Twitter. All my art gets posted there. All my articles get posted there. If you want to read my articles, you can go to my blog, which is frostylight.ca. I write some very interesting pieces about video games. I'm not just saying that because I wrote them. This week we had an article about how Titanfall tells a meaningful story through its gameplay and how Lena's Inception is a pretty alright game that people should check out, especially if they had that itch.io bundle. If you just want to look at my art, you can follow me on Instagram at FrostyLight. That's just like a art place. That's all I post there is art. So if you're just interested in my art, you can follow me over on there. And on Fridays at twitch.tv/FrostyLight, I stream at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Sometimes art, sometimes gaming. I was kind of taking a break from art, but I did an art stream last week. And I was actually pretty impressed with the result that came out of it. So it seemed like I needed a bit of a break from art to kind of get the funk out. I think that's about everything. So yeah. That's where you can kind of find me and my stuff.
Thank you all for joining, and stay frosty.